Happy Friday. I had to think about that one for a second because, man, it has been a week. And I was just telling Tara they moved the record button again on Zoom. And I swear this is like something that happens every month. And I feel like they do this to like mess with people. But anyhow, for those of you who have been around for a while with this podcast and know we used to talk about manifesting and stuff. Just a little fun fact, we're in eclipse season. We had a solar eclipse. Now we're going to have a lunar eclipse with the full moon this month. So whether you get into all that stuff or not, I think there's no denying that when there are these astrological events, it stirs a lot of energy, and I'm feeling it.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do a different episode today where we're just gonna talk about what's really going on with us and our mindset. And this is literally like spur of the moment because this morning, I woke up and I was driving my daughter to school at 6 a.m. And stupidly, I put on like my Facebook video feed, which is all just politics and the news. And instead of listening to like something positive, like subliminals or an uplifting podcast, I decided to start my day with that. And what this video was talking about was what's happening in Congress with Jim Jordan not getting enough votes. And like, so stupid. It's like people that literally were nominating him at the beginning of the year are now voting against him, which just makes no sense to me whatsoever. And I just got like really pissed off. And not even pissed off, I just got to the point where I was like, why am I even wasting my time and energy with this when the same shit happens? Like nothing ever changes. And just kind of realizing that the Republican Party, especially, is like so dysfunctional. Therefore, nothing good is really coming from it. And just kind of realizing where we were at. And then to add on to that, for the past few weeks, like I went on vacation and I came back to all of this stuff with Israel, which we talked about. And it's just so heavy and it's so dark. And it's stuff that I feel like no human being should ever like even know about or experience. Like I can't wrap my mind around the fact that some of this stuff is happening and not only happening, but it's all we ever hear about. It's the only thing that people are talking about on the news, on TikTok, on social media. And so for those of you that like follow us on TikTok, like I went from posting all throughout the day, being on there all the time, like loving it, constantly adding, my thoughts on everything to not posting anything because I can't even bring myself to go on there because it just makes me depressed, like super depressed. And so I was just in this feeling of like defeat. And I texted Tara and I was like, should we just take a break from the podcast? Like, you just moved overseas and, you're not settled in your new home yet and all of that. And I thought maybe this is just a sign that we should just pause it and wait until you're moved in and my, mental health is a little bit healthier and then we reconvene. And so you responded and you had said like something to the effect of like, I think we need to keep going with it. As difficult as it is, like we just can't be defeated by this. And
Yeah.
that just it hit me. It hit me so hard, that word defeat, because that was like exactly how I was feeling. And I am not the type of person to throw in the towel or be defeated or to give up with anything. And so it kind of like made me realize like, holy shit, like I'm at that point and that's not good. And like, let's look at this. So in the matter of like an hour, maybe 2 hours, you and I have like covered so much in such a short period of time that I went from feeling totally defeated to like, fuck yeah, let's do this. Let's keep doing this. But we need to like reassess our mind, or at least I need to reassess my mindset, I should say, and the way that I'm approaching this, because I went from feeling like I was very awake and on top of things to feeling like I just went right into what the establishment, the elite, the cabal, whatever you want to call it, wants us to do. And like, I feel like I fell hook, line, and sinker for it. And I feel like you just kind of woke me up this morning to like, no, snap out of it, get your shit together. We're doing this. So thank you, Tara.
You're welcome. And I've also been feeling, why are we doing this sometimes? Like, I'm so determined and I just like, I know that this is the right thing for us to be doing, but when all I see is the negative shit, and especially because I'm still stuck in this hotel room, and I have 6 channels on the TV, and 80% of them are news. And
Mhm.
so I'm so over it a lot of the time. I've been putting on like German MTV in the background. And, I've started, like, I'm not doing my normal workouts. I'm not doing the stuff I would normally do because I don't have access to the things I normally have. So it's very easy for me to kind of go down that rabbit hole of feeling that way. And I'm not going to lie, this morning I opened up a bag of potato chips. And before, I was waiting for you to wake up because we're now, what, 6 hours apart. And
Yeah.
so I was waiting for you to wake up because I was thinking, God, what are we going to talk about today? Like, I don't want to keep talking about Israel because it is so dark.
Mhm.
And because I just feel like then we're just focusing on all the negative shit. And I sat there eating potato chips and I was like, what the fuck are you doing? And then when you text me, I was like, damn, okay. Um, I totally get how she's feeling. I said, but no, that's exactly what they want. They want us to be fucking defeated. They want us to give up, and they want us to not stand up for what we believe in. And I just felt so strongly in that conviction of like, no, we need to keep doing this, and we need to keep speaking out, and we need to just be straightforward with how we're feeling right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is where like I love it when everyone listening reaches out because back when I started this podcast, like I was so conflicted and because my whole business is around the law of attraction and like what you focus on expands and I didn't want to focus on things that are negative, but it really did have a complete opposite effect because what was happening was I was taking all this information in and just suppressing it and it
Yeah.
was like eating me alive inside and it did not feel good. When we started this podcast, like not only did it help me like get that energy out, but I just felt like so empowered and
Yes.
it's fun. Like I know we bitch and stuff, but I feel like we do it in like a fun, playful way that kind of makes light of the situation. Like it is fun poking fun of Joe Biden. Like it just is. And it like makes light of a situation that otherwise would be really depressing. So I feel like it's been so helpful in that way. But I also like when we started this podcast, like I've had people reach out that were like, I liked you before, but I fucking love you now because you're saying what I wish I could say, what I want to say, what no one else is saying. And that's exactly how I feel. I feel like I've always been a people pleaser and I just didn't want to do that anymore. I just want to be authentic and you either like it or you hate it. I don't care, but like this is who I am. So it's been great. And I think the turning point, and it's probably because of all of this eclipse energy. So I'm going to throw that in there because I'm very like sensitive to like full moons and stuff. But I've just been feeling like so depressed. And it's all around the Israel Gaza conflict. And so, like, all of this morning that we kind of talked about, I feel like a veil has just been like lifted. And I'm like, holy shit, like, this is exactly part of this plan. So, like, we talked about on a previous episode how, like, let's just say, for argument's sake, that the establishment, the military industrial complex, the cabal, whatever you want to call it, let's just say that they know that the law of attraction is real. And of course, they don't call it that, but let's just say they know that like energy is powerful. And so they program us with the media and TV, which we know that they do, to think a certain thing and to give emotion to a certain thing. And so we manifest it for them. So I was thinking about it this morning after, that initial text and just looking at it from a practical standpoint. What has happened in the past? What has it even been? Like a week and a half, 2 weeks, not even. Number one, it has kept us divided. So prior to this whole Israel thing, I feel like people were kind of waking up to that. Not everyone, but a lot of people were. They're like, they want us to fight about race and gender and, you
Yeah,
know,
it's not even keeping us divided, it's creating a new level of division. Like,
yes.
I think this whole war has created a divide in America beyond all the racial divides and everything else that was put in
Yeah.
place with this administration. And it's just become so apparent. It's kind of like when COVID started, and you had your
Hmm.
family members and friends who they cut ties with you if you didn't feel the same way about COVID. And I think that that's the same thing that's happening here with
Yeah.
this whole issue. And I think that's purposeful.
Totally purposeful. And I think it's why they focus on these like horrible crimes that are happening, especially with like children, because they know it creates a huge emotion and division. And it's taking it to a whole other level because it's like people are flat out like saying things that you wouldn't ever say in public,
Right.
And so we kind of know, and I think they know that COVID's not going to work again. Another pandemic, we're on to you. We're not freaking falling for it again. But here we're falling for it again, and we're completely
Right.
divided, and not just divided, like freaking hate the people on the other side. Because how can you possibly stand for that, right? And the other thing is it's keeping us totally distracted. Just like you said, it's the only thing that you see when you go online, when you go on TV, like it is what everyone is talking about. And just like little things, like notice how no one has even looked at like Hunter Biden lately and the fact that his gun charge was just dropped by a judge out of the blue. Like no one's talking about that. No one's talking about like the gag order that was just put on Trump so he cannot effectively do his campaigning. Like there's so many things. And that's just like little things that I have found. Just imagine what else is going on that they're trying to distract us from, which I'm going to bring up some of that in a second because it kind of all came through this morning where I was like, holy shit, this is the plan. This is the new world order, great reset, whatever plan. And the biggest eye opener for me, because this is where I was like, I totally fell for this, was the people like me that were 100% against the Ukraine war, against funding it, against sending equipment over there, totally got on board with Israel. Like, yes, we should send them funding and equipment. And not
Mhm.
that I thought like America should go get in the war, but I was like, yeah, fuck yeah. Like, get those terrorist bastards. Like, and I'm like, holy shit. Like, I just got right on board with the whole military industrial complex and like the constant state of war that they want us to be in and the constant state of spending and funding. And what it made me realize was not that I'm like, we shouldn't help Israel, because I do absolutely agree with that. But can we? Because we have spent so much with Ukraine. And if you listen to some of these generals that are giving interviews, they're saying that we can't withstand a war because if this breaks out into like a regional conflict with Iran, we're
Yeah,
fucked.
we're
It
fucked.
then becomes World War III, which means we're going up not just against Iran, but Russia and China and anyone else in the world that fucking hates us. And we don't have the capabilities. We've spent so much of our equipment, our like everything that we have, sent it
We,
overseas.
we don't have the capabilities. We don't have the resources. We don't have the mindset. That's the
No,
biggest thing. We don't have a military with the mindset that's
they've been
necessary to
talking about,
overcome this.
yeah, they've been promoting hiring like gender affirming,
Mhm.
like all this nonsense, which has made a lot of like the masculine people in our society kind of turned off from the military, in my opinion. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's why the numbers are down so much. But again, is that part of the plan? Because what
Yes.
happens then? What happens if there is World War III? Our military is like, we just don't have the capability. The economy, okay, like I feel like I make a pretty good income and I go to the store. I am telling you, I'm like, what the fuck? It is double to buy basic groceries, like just basic staples. So what happens when we go to war? Well, things are going to get tougher because we get everything from these countries. And if we don't have all this stuff coming in, prices are going to go up to what we can't even fathom.
And we touched on this the other day too,
Yeah.
that our strategic oil reserves, nobody's talking about that.
Yeah. They're
Nobody's talking
depleted.
about that, but they're
Hmm.
depleted.
And
And so those
what
are
are they there for?
necessary.
They're
Right.
there for a situation like a world war.
Yeah.
And so why did our president deplete them? Why? Why?
Mhm.
Because the guy is fucking compromised, right? So all of this leads to one outcome, which is the whole plan of, I'm just going to say the World Economic Forum slash United Nations slash like whatever, all of those groups, they flat out, they don't try to hide it. They've said it. We've shown video of it. They want a one world order. They want 15-minute cities. They want to control the supply of everything. And what else do they want? They want CBDC, central digital currency. So if we're at war and we're screwed, and all of our strong men, by the way, are like, let's just say they're drafted and gone, what's going to happen? It's like, don't worry, we'll take care of you. We're going to put you in these FEMA camps that we set up all across the United States years ago that just happen to fit millions of people, and we'll give you this bank account that's digital so you can buy everything you need for your family. And there we go. Like, we walked right into it. And
Yeah.
so what's happening now, I feel like all of those people like myself that were like awake to the bullshit and talking about it and fighting against it and saying no way, never, we're walking right into it willingly. And it's
Yeah.
all with this Israel conflict. And I'm not saying that like what happened was planned or set up or any of that, because I know there's a lot of that narrative going around. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying that whatever happened there, the people that want this are going to take full advantage of it to fulfill their agenda. And as much as I believe in the power of manifestation, I feel like by us feeding into that and giving emotion to it and talking about it, we're like manifesting it for them. We're like getting everyone on board with it for them. So that was kind of like my little crisis this morning.
Yeah. And I think the difference too is like, this is different because, making that comparison with COVID again, of dividing people, that was a division based on fear. This is a division based on anger and strong emotion, which is almost more powerful. It's like it's a whole different level. And, people think irrationally when they're afraid, and they think irrationally when they're angry. But when you are, like you said earlier, we were getting to the point where Americans are waking up and people are starting to, resume that feeling of patriotism and pride and like, let's fight for this country. And then this happens and you throw this new kind of division into the mix.
Yeah.
It's just like, where do you go from here?
Right.
Because how do you
It's
get
not
that
good.
back? Yeah.
It's not, you don't go anywhere good. And just like you were saying where you're at, or I'm sorry, in Austria, when you went, they had that protest for the World Health Organization. Well, again, like, who's going to come to the rescue? The people with the funds. Who has the funds? The WHO, the CDC, the WEF, like all of these people that we know like have a very nefarious plan.
Yeah.
We become dependent on them because, like you said, we do stupid, irrational things based on anger without really thinking long term about the consequences. And these consequences are huge. I mean, we
Mhm.
cannot get into a war. And I didn't even realize like how bad it was until like I started listening to some of these people in the military high up that were just kind of talking about how we're just completely not prepared. And I kind of knew that, but I didn't know the extent of it until they really laid it out. And it's not good. Like, we can't withstand it. It would be the end of America, not in the sense that we're going to be bombed by a nuclear bomb. I don't think that would happen. I don't think they need that to happen. I think we would be
No,
ended
that's,
because of the economy and money and
yeah,
resources.
that's just it. They don't ever, this whole threat of nuclear war, I agree with you. It's not necessary because how easy is it? We're so weak as a nation. The United States is so weak. Our military is so weak. Even just our general population, as we've talked about before, is dependent, weak, and complacent. And it's like when you create that, when people have it so good that they find stupid shit to complain about, that's what's been going on in this country for so long. We've gotten so off track, and it's all been purposefully done by our government to get us off track. And they want us in this position. And, a lot of people have woken up to that, but I don't think enough people have. And
No, definitely not.
I don't see how we're going to go in a good direction from this. And I the idea of getting into a war, like, we're not the America that we once were. We don't have the, like I said, the mindset is so huge, and that's something you and I used to talk about all the time, was mindset. And our several generations now have been basically indoctrinated with a mindset of weakness.
Hmm. Maybe we need to start talking about mindset again. I mean, shit, like I feel like we go back and forth, but it's like not even like, oh my gosh, like let's be so positive, but it's like that badass mindset that you have, Tara, that you've kind of like taught me. I think that's what people need because we're weak, we're comfortable, we're complacent. And we wouldn't know the first thing to do in a conflict here in America.
Right.
And you had said something when we talked earlier before we started recording about how the media is like totally desensitizing us right now, which it is. I mean, I was listening, I think it was Megan Kelly. I was listening to like one of those big media personalities, and she was talking about how horrific it is to talk about what was happening like with the children in Israel. And by the third day, she's like, this is going to sound terrible, but every day it gets easier to talk about. And that's not normal. Oh,
Yeah.
she had Dr. Drew, and he was like, this is not good because it's desensitizing us, but it's desensitizing our kids. Our younger
Yeah.
generations are thinking, this is just going to be normal. And it goes back to like that experiment in the beginning of the 1900s with shit, what was his name? It was like Pavlov's dog. It was
Yeah.
classical conditioning. Um and I mean, our government has been using classical conditioning. Corporations have been using it through our media, our music, our movies, everything we consume. It's been used for decades to get us all thinking a certain way. And it's happening again. It's desensitizing us to these atrocities.
Well, they say, like, look at kids with video games, like video
Hmm.
games that are all
Yes.
violent. It's just
Mhm.
they play these video games day in and day out for years, and it's just normal. And so when you
Right.
see it on TV, oh, that's just normal.
And that's why I was so outspoken last week about this anti-Semitism, because like I don't know if it's because my grandma like lived through it or what, but like I've always been really fascinated with the Holocaust and like how did that happen? I just don't understand how it happened. It was classical conditioning, and they're doing it again. When you have protests every day and you have thousands of people, and every single TikTok, by the
Yeah.
way, that you see is basically talking about how Jews are bad, like that is conditioning these younger generations to eventually accept it. Of course, like in the beginning, it's like you're going to question it, but after hearing it all the time, it's that classical conditioning and you don't think anymore. You just accept it. And that is what is really scary, I think, about what's happening with this whole conflict. And so I think it's like crazy because I went from feeling defeated to feeling really empowered because I think that if we can look at it from that lens of like, I'm on to you, motherfuckers. And like, I'm not going to just walk right into this and give up. I'm going to look at this with that lens of like, how is this benefiting the great reset or whatever you want to call it? I think it's going to be helpful because I think that's part of our job is to keep that awakening coming. This whole year is supposed to be a year of like awakening. And I think now it's our job to look at all these people that like we're awakened and now we're falling for this shit again and be like, hey, snap out of it. Like, we've got to look at this from a bigger standpoint and like look at the outcome. And we don't want this. I
Yeah,
don't know.
because when you first texted me this morning, I thought, yeah, maybe for a split second, I'm like, okay, maybe we just don't do an episode for Friday. And then let's take the weekend and see how we feel. And then as I'm texting you, I was like, no, like, that's we can't again, the defeat thing. I'm like, we can't fucking be defeated. Like, we are doing this for a reason. We have this platform for a purpose. We are so fucking privileged to have the ability to get on Zoom from two different halfway across the world and be able to talk to people. Like that's so fucking huge. And I just felt like we can't waste that opportunity, even if we feel shitty.
Yeah. And that's why I would love to hear from like some of our listeners to see where you're at. Cause there's probably a lot of people feeling that way, just feeling overwhelmed, defeated. Like, I'm so done with all this, like, and just kind of like giving up mentally a little bit. And that's where like I got a little bit confused too. Cause, like I like to tune into like my intuition and like divine timing and like all that, the woo woo kind of
Yeah.
stuff that we talk about sometimes. And I was thinking about that this morning. I'm like, well, if I feel this way, and then like you've had trouble with like internet, like in the hotel and stuff, and like maybe it's all a sign that we should take a break. Like that's the way I was looking at it. But I really think everything happens for a reason. And I think that all happened because it like got me to like wake up.
Okay, I have to share something then because I'm I'm doing this like little course on connecting with your spirit guides because now I have all
Yeah.
this time to focus on all these things I want to do. And one of the things that was talking about in the course was like connecting with what you love. Like what are the things that you love? And like what is the number one thing you're grateful for right now and the thing that you love right now? And the first thought that came to my mind was my freedom. Like that is what I am most grateful for is my freedom.
Yeah.
And what do I love about that? I love that I get to speak out. I love that I get to share my opinions and thoughts. I love that I have the freedom to do this. And that if we don't have the freedoms in our country, nobody gets to do this. And so to me, this is very empowering. And as depressing as it gets sometimes with the stuff we talk about, like we, again, are in a very privileged position to be able to do this. And I think it's important that we do.
Yeah. And I totally agree with that. And I think our freedom is something we take for granted because like it's been multiple generations that have just had it and never had it threatened, like truly threatened. And now we're kind of in this situation where like it is, up in the air. Like we don't know what's going to happen, moving forward. And we have to like fight for that freedom. And I think the depressed like aspect of it comes in when you do like kind of just give up and just say like, well, it's just going to happen. I can't do anything to change it.
Yeah.
But when you go at it of like, no, like I'm going to do my part to speak out about this, then you go from feeling depressed to empowered. Like, no, we can change this. If enough people wake up and speak up, we can change this. And that's what I tell people. Like so many times in our comments, people say like, well, what can we do? What can we do to help? Like we want to help. We don't know what to do to help. And every single time I say, speak up, like be outspoken. This is freaking called unapologetically outspoken. Quit being afraid of what your coworkers are going to think and freaking speak up because you never know how many other people you're going to impact because of that. And then those people go on to impact other people and it becomes a ripple effect. So yeah, like I feel like way more like, fuck yeah, let's do
Good.
this. And funny story. So, the last couple of days, I said something, and my 14-year-old, it was like about Biden going over to Israel. She was cracking me up. She's like, oh shit, are they trying to take him out? Like, is that why they're sending him there? And I just started laughing, and she's like, wait, does that mean we're going to be stuck with Kamala? And I
Oh,
was like, oh my God, it just cracked me up that at 14, she's like on to like, just the
happening.
absurdity of this crap that's going on. Um, so yeah, I mean, I want to hear from everybody else and see where they're from. And hopefully this episode will kind of put things in a perspective and help everyone get out of that mode. Because I'm sure there's a lot of people feeling that way, especially if you've been watching the news or social media.
Yep.
So should we end it on a positive note? Because we do have some good news for once.
Yes. Yes, we do.
All right, I'm just going to play a clip because it's better than me trying to explain it. But it's Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who's now the governor of Arkansas, that has some really good news about what we've talked about so many times on the podcast around China buying up all of our farmland. So I'm going to go ahead and play her announcement.
I'm announcing that Syngenta, a Chinese state-owned agrochemical company, must give up its land holdings in Arkansas. Syngenta owns 160 acres in Northeast Arkansas, which it uses primarily for seed research. The company that owns Syngenta, Kim China, is also on the Department of Defense's list of Chinese military companies posing a clear threat to our state. Seeds are technology. Chinese state-owned corporations filter that technology back to their homeland, stealing American research and telling our enemies how to target American farms. That is a clear threat to our national security and to our great farmers, especially since the Chinese government enacted a law in 2017 requiring Chinese citizens abroad to collaborate with their country's security officials on intelligence work with no questions asked. This isn't about where you're from. We welcome Chinese Americans, Russian Americans, and anyone else who's given up foreign oppression for American freedom. This is about where your loyalties lie. We simply cannot trust those who pledge allegiance to a hostile foreign power. That's why I signed Act 525, sponsored by Representative McKenzie and Senator Boyd, to ban Chinese and Russian-made drones. And it's why I signed Act 758, sponsored by Representative McElendon and Senator Stubblefield, banning public contracts with the CCP. We will make sure that every company operating in Arkansas is a friend to Arkansas and good to hardworking Arkansans. Secretary Ward has already notified Syngenta about this decision. If they refuse to sell, our Attorney General can move forward with legal proceedings and force them to get out of our state. Arkansas will always protect our farmers and our national security interest.
Fuck yeah. I liked her before, but man, like, it's so good to see someone taking action and actually doing something about it.
Yeah, she is awesome. And one of the things that I read an article on this as well, and it was talking about how when they were doing research on this, like the University of Arkansas's Natural Agriculture Law Center found out that like 26 states have now enacted laws that like prohibit foreigners from owning farmland. And so I feel like at least that's a good movement in the right direction now.
Yeah, and hopefully if Arkansas is doing this, other states will step up and take the same measures. I mean, I'm hoping. I think they will. So that's some good news. We're ending on a positive note for once.
Yeah. And I think this was a really good conversation, and just keeping it real with like, yeah, we report on this stuff, but it doesn't mean we don't struggle with it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it definitely needed to be said. And I think it's going to hit people too that are going through the same thing and maybe just like haven't quite figured out why. And we're kind of at that point of feeling defeated. So hopefully it gives everyone a little bit of like motivation to stand firm in what you believe. Keep speaking up. It's more important now than ever. And the more people that do that, the better chance we have of like continuing to have our freedom and not getting into another world war.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope you have a great weekend.